So it's nice to meet all of you. I was trying to talk to some of you this morning. So I'm Chris Erdmann. I used to work at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics as the head librarian there. And now I'm the chief strategist for research collaboration at the North Carolina State University Libraries. It was very interesting recently. I was at a conference in Australia, and they're like, where's North Carolina? So it's near Washington, D.C., where I work, too, if you want to know. But anyways, I wanted to start off by saying, in some ways, why the beginnings of DS240, Data Scientist Training for Librarians, is that in many ways, I and other people have expressed the same concern that librarians were just not on the same level as maybe our researchers. And I like this as a sort of visual representation. This is from Christian Lauerson, who's going to be here later today, about like sort of the library fortress. And this just represents how, in some ways, how I felt and other people that that we just weren't making the connections that we had with our researchers to really get out from the desk and experience more a part of what they were experiencing. So the second sort of idea that I fall upon is someone from ANS, the Australian National Data Service. So I recently was at this meeting in Australia, and this person named Jens Klump, who worked at DataSite and now works at the Australian National Data Service, we were kind of throwing our hands up in the air because usually at every conference you hear someone say about carrots and sticks, and we've got to use the carrots and the sticks, and so we were like, enough of these carrots and sticks, and he had a great sort of way of describing it as waterhole. Meet the researchers at the waterhole. So really experience the same things that they're experiencing, and try to meet them there, not try to design a system, try to design a way of doing things in a way that doesn't make sense to the researchers. So I really liked this idea of the water hole too, and throwing out the carrots and the sticks. So really one of the fundamental pillars of DS240 is really to go through this process. This is one of my favorite visualizations of representations of the data lifecycle, research data lifecycle, of just showing all the iteration that happens where you revisit things. And I think oftentimes you see this very structured representation. Like you go from here to there, and it's very structured, it's very linear, and this one really represents how you go back and forth in the process, and that's where I feel like, going through this, you experience it and you sympathize with the researchers. So when they come up to you and you say, oh, you do this and that, you can experience what they're experiencing and say, well, I can't do that. I'm in this part of the process. So you recognize this picture? This is the previous data scientist training for librarians here. And I guess at the time we were working on, I believe it might have been Open Refine, which we'll get our hands dirty with later today. But it's really, that practical way of just working with the tools that some of our researchers are working with to understand their own, they're working with the same things that they do. I think it helps us understand our own services. And just to, one of the things too, like just give you context of why some of these things might be helpful. So why are you learning Open Refine? Well, wrangling data is one of the things that you hear often from researchers, that 80–90% of their time is spent on this. And it's true. You spend a lot of time cleaning and sort of iterating on your data to really understand what's going on. There's some other tools in this program that are helpful for you to understand, like, where does this plug in the research life cycle? How can the library hook into that? Like, how can we provide services for that as well? So that's just an example for you. But really, some of the goals of DS240 And this is really at the top of the list, was really just to gain an understanding of what people, what your research community was going through. The number one goal is usually hit in all the trainings. So far, there've been about, I think it's 160 now. Today, we're reaching 200. Maybe it's even more now. I think it's 240 people have gone through training in DS2 and all of the people have said, I feel comfortable whenever I go back now, I can speak to this. And that's really just the number one goal is, you feel comfortable because also learning this is hard, as Casper said. Just to have a basic understanding is a starting point, and from there you can move forward. The other thing too is, just like I said, working with tools to get a practical knowledge. I think that's always been a goal too, that you can come away with one skill at least. Like, I know how to use this tool. And I feel comfortable with that tool. That's another goal. We don't normally reach that 100% level with everyone, but at least, at least 50% people come away and say, I can use this tool, like, I'm comfortable. And then, culture too, like, I think the other thing is that it's very difficult, and I experienced this in other trainings, that people had a difficult time at least starting with trying to program or do different things, and it's understandable. It's really hard to do this stuff, and it's I think that's what we're trying to break through to here, like the culture of just trying things, and it's all right if it fails. Failure is an option, I think here. So experiencing that as well, and then just growing the community, and it sounds like the community is going to start growing here. I was talking to Casper last night, and that's a really good sign. And then, at the end here, it's empower librarians. Really, just wanted to, and a good example is, I used the example of IT coming in and saying, well, you won't understand this, and you won't understand this, and it bugged me. I always felt like we could be much more. We could. I just wanted to empower librarians, and again, it's happening here in Copenhagen, empowering librarians, which is a great thing. So the basics of a DS2 is that you sort of follow a path, the research data lifecycle, and you have various components of it. So you get to work with tools and work on sort of the concepts related to those tools. And then you provide context. So we have speakers talking about various parts of the life cycle. So you need to back up sometimes and say, why am I learning this? How does this fit in with everything? And I've found from various people that they appreciate that, like the context of what it means in libraries, what it means for the researchers. They've appreciated that. Come back to this again. It's all right today if things blow up and don't work. I guarantee it will happen, and we're all in the same boat together. And this is an image that someone annotated in one of the previous DS2 files called Mount Learning to Program. And I always like, the annotations of where they were in the training and how difficult it was. So there was sort of the acceptance that it takes a lot of work to learn these things. And to back up too, like I can share with you too. So people that have been in the training program have gotten back to me and told me about their challenges. And one of the things is you could go back. One of the stories I've heard is you go back and you start talking about these things, and management doesn't necessarily get it, and your colleagues don't. And I think that's one thing to think about as well in the back of your mind. Like, how can I approach that? The other thing is that sometimes they'll take you and say, you're our new data savvy librarian. You're going to work sort of over here and do all the new things separate of the others. And the whole idea is, I think you bring what you learn to everyone. And so I've seen that. I've seen that at Harvard. a group sort of pulled away and said, you're our savvy group, and that's a shame. Like, I think you have to turn around and teach others and bring them up to the same level. And I've seen people like leave libraries and go into web development or something like that from the and I've seen people get new jobs from this. But at the end of the day, I've always seen people sort of say that they really have upgraded their skills. And here's just an example of one of the people. She was a cataloger, and I put Twitter handles at the bottom here. But Vernica is a cataloger at Harvard, and she learned Python in one of the previous DS2ForLs, and she automated some of the OCLC processes that they had. And I love this quote from her: "My job may be creating and editing MARC records, but I'm capable of more than that." That's that empowerment, right? Like, I think that was great. That was, but again, she had these challenges with her coworkers of like, this is why it's important. Even when she demonstrated that she was able to turn around things, make them more efficient. And I think what she did took them 3 days of just going through text and marking things up, and it's down like to hours what they do. And here's another story from, these were students, library school students that took the program, that told their sort of story about how they've improved from it. And so I think the story is about how one of the students used it in a gazetteer project, so mining the literature and finding data points in it. So, and a quote from him later too was that, again, he felt like he needed to learn this, that it was important for his career moving forward, that all library school students really kind of need this. So where are we headed? I told you about that concern about management not fully understanding like the time it takes to learn this on the job, but also building learning into your projects. So having an idea, the project, how like that can be designed to bring in these various moments where you could expand your horizons on this area. So we're a group of people, and even Jeanette, who's here, yeah, there we go, we're gonna participate in a workshop that looks at, and James is gonna be there. I forgot, yeah, where we're gonna try to understand how we can write a report, communicate this to the larger library community about how you can use this in your own library setting. But I think more importantly for me, that report is going to be important for managers to give us the time to do this, and so that's part of the grant as well. And then just to conclude too, like I honestly think that what you're learning here is important to your researchers as well. When we ran DS2ForL at Harvard, I had astrophysicists coming in and saying, I would like to take that too. Why are you doing it only for the librarians? And the reason was because we needed to upskill a good deal, but it was interesting to hear our astronomers say, and they participated in hack days with us too, and they said after that, they learned a lot too, and they're what they do is they improve their workflows through like, well, specifically one thing was someone had learned how to use pandas, and that's a library in Python for working with data. So that was amazing to hear. I always get intimidated by astrophysicists. I used to work with them, but it was great to hear them say, like, we need this as well, what you're doing with the library. And so I think, organic, in a community way, what you're doing in DS2ForL is something that libraries should consider as well as services for your community, your overall community, because everyone needs these skills. And it's almost like a partnership. You can't do it all yourself. You can't have one data librarian handling the whole university. That's just not possible. So you need the members of your library, your team, together with you, and then also, the researchers participating, figuring it out together. I think organically that's a good way for services moving forward. So I'll leave it at that. And if anyone has any questions, how are we doing on time? Do we have a little bit more time? 10, yeah. So if you have any questions, I can take some right now. Oh, I have to, okay. Or you can yell it out right now. We're not ready. Oh, yeah, okay.
Den er tændt? Jo. Er nogen spørgsmål? Any questions? Sorry, English.
I think everyone's ready to learn. So.
Yeah, they're ready to learn, eager to learn.
All right.
Should it be out here so it doesn't buzz? Well, not
right.
Any questions? We have fresh coffee, so before we mic up Henriette, you can fill the cups if you want to, and if you dare with all the hardware around you. But the coffee is right next to this side over there. I think this one up there is empty. So, okay. 3 minutes, we start again.